Welcome, listeners. Today we explore the intricate and often turbulent world of global migration. Picture a small English town. The high street hums with life, voices familiar and new, laughter spilling from cafes, the rhythm of daily routines. Yet beneath it all, a subtle tension weaves itself in. Faces once recognized are fewer. The familiar is replaced by strangers carrying different histories, different hopes. Now across the sea, imagine a small smuggler's boot, overcrowded, creaking under the weight of weary travelers clinging to life, their eyes fixed on a horizon promising safety. Waves crash against the hull, each swell a reminder of uncertainty, danger, and hope intertwined. These worlds, separated by distance, collide in the vast tide of migration, shaping nations and lives alike. And now one question lingers. Can nations remain nations without borders? Migration is never a single story. Legal migration flows through structured paths, visas, quotas, programs designed to match skills with need. In the United States, engineers and scientists arrive through H-1B visas, each a thread in the economic fabric. In Europe, the blue card welcomes those filling gaps left by aging populations. In the United Kingdom, doctors, engineers, and caregivers arrive legally, quietly supporting communities and services. Indian families in Birmingham integrate seamlessly, running businesses, supporting schools, enriching daily life. One economist notes, immigration drives growth, and smarter policies could unlock even more. Legal migration is visible, structured, appreciated, a steady hand guiding society forward. Illegal migration, however, carries risk and unpredictability. In the United States, 14 million unauthorized immigrants were recorded in 2023. In the United Kingdom, over 178,000 people crossed the Channel in small boats between 2021 and 2025, mostly young men from Afghanistan, Syria, and Eritrea. These arrivals strain housing, healthcare, and public trust. Clinics fill, schools stretch, streets transform. One online comment captures the sentiment. Nobody opposes immigration. It's the illegal, uncontrolled kind that sparks anger. Communities respond, policies shift, and society stretches to accommodate new threads, sometimes fraying at the edges. Why undertake such perilous journeys? Push and pull factors intertwine. Wars, poverty, repression, and climate crises push people from their homes. Safety, opportunity, and stability pull them toward Western shores. The US invasion of Iraq in 2003, the war in Afghanistan beginning in 2001, the Syrian civil conflict, and Libya's collapse in 2011 uprooted millions, leaving landscapes of fear. Eritrea's dictatorship drives thousands more. By mid-2024, over 122 million people were forcibly displaced. Beneath it all lies a quiet demographic truth. Fertility rates in the West are falling. 1.6 per woman in the United States, 1.24 in Italy, 1.23 in Spain. Japan is at 1.26, South Korea at 0.78. Societies age, workers are needed, but integration falters. Some ask why governments do not support families more to reduce reliance on migration. And one wonders, had wars been avoided, would millions have stayed in their homelands, economies steadier, cultural tensions fewer? The journeys themselves are often unimaginable. Legal migrants navigate paperwork, employment, housing safely. Illegal migrants cross deserts, stormy seas, gambling with death. In the UK, small boat crossings surged until crackdowns, then fell 21% over 8 months. In the US, detentions and deportations attempt to regulate the flow, but behind every number is a human life. A father longing to provide, a child dreaming of school, a mother seeking safety. Each choice resonates far beyond statistics. Migration shapes economies and societies. Legal migrants create businesses, care for the elderly, pay taxes. In Canada, they make up 20% of the population, but contribute 23% of GDP. In the UK, migration accounts for nearly all population growth. Yet, illegal migration tests communities. Housing rises, wages soften, public services strain, cultural shifts spark debate. In Britain, arrivals from Muslim-majority countries raise questions about identity and cohesion. In Sweden, some neighborhoods see higher crime rates. Far-right parties gain support, channeling uncertainty and fear. Suffering is real on both sides. Illegal migrants risk drowning, 3,000 in the Mediterranean alone in 2024. Smugglers exploit them. Natives endure trauma too. In Rotherham, Rochdale and beyond, grooming gangs left scars still felt today. Between the 1980s and 2013, roughly 1,400 girls in Rotherham were abused. Recent sentences in Rochdale totaled 174 years. Fear of accusations silenced authorities, leaving survivors with lifelong trauma. Communities carry grief and anger. Riots at asylum centres in 2024 and 25 reflect this collective frustration. Cultural changes heighten divisions. Cities face projections where natives may become minorities. Informal religious councils emerge, parallel to the law. Practices like female genital mutilation affect tens of thousands, corroding trust. Poverty and segregation create no-go zones, feeding fear and uncertainty. Natives watch communities change. Migrants struggle to belong. Had Western interventions been less disruptive, tensions might be lighter. Governments across the Western world often appear conflicted, caught between ideals and realities. Their policing seems uneven, their rhetoric uncertain. Policies shift, not always from conviction, but from pressure, political, social, moral. Far-right movements find fertile ground in this uncertainty, gaining strength not only from anger but from the quiet disillusionment of those who feel unheard. Meanwhile, far from the Western capitals that debate migration, vast networks of influence operate in silence. Wealthy Gulf states fund religious movements abroad, yet seldom open their own borders to those displaced by conflict. The world's displaced, often weary and desperate, turn their gaze toward Europe or America, lands they imagine as sanctuaries of order, justice, and hope. For them, migration is not a dream, it is survival. And so arises a haunting question. Does the West permit migration as penance for its wars? The interventions in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya each justified in the name of security or liberation, unleashed consequences that echo still. Entire societies fractured, millions uprooted. The 2015 refugee crisis, when more than 1.3 million souls sought refuge in Europe, is not an isolated chapter of history. It is the human aftermath of decades of policy. NATO's actions, however well-intentioned, often prolonged instability, leaving power vacuums where order once stood. To many in the West, the waves of migration feel like a reckoning, a moral debt carried across oceans and deserts. To migrants, however, the same journey represents something far simpler, a chance to live, to rebuild, to hope again. Multiculturalism, once the proud emblem of modern Western identity, now stands at a crossroads. For years, it was celebrated as proof that diversity strengthens democracy. But today, that conviction is under scrutiny. Where integration succeeds, the results are visible. Communities enriched by new languages, cuisines, and stories. Cities alive with the vibrancy of many worlds coexisting. Yet where integration falters, division seeps in. Suspicion grows. The word diversity begins to lose its warmth, becoming a mirror for mutual misunderstanding. And beneath it all, a deeper concern emerges: the preservation of national identity. Every nation is unique because of its native people, their culture, their language, their laws. These are not barriers, they are the architecture of belonging. Immigration, while essential and often beneficial, must respect that foundation. When integration turns into imposition, societies begin to fracture. In parts of Britain, for example, there have been attempts to introduce local interpretations of Sharia law within certain communities, attempts that challenge the primacy of secular law and national unity. Many Britons now confess they scarcely recognize their own towns. Familiar streets feel foreign, not because of who walks them, but because the shared values that once bound those streets together are dissolving. A nation's identity should never be compromised in the name of compassion. True inclusion means participation in the life of the country, not parallel societies living side by side but apart. Legal immigration, managed with transparency and fairness, strengthens a nation when it is measured against the nation's capacity to accommodate, economically, socially, and culturally. Unchecked immigration, however well-intentioned, risks overwhelming systems and eroding the very character that migrants sought to join. Integration, then, is not merely coexistence. It is a shared journey. The native hopes the newcomer will embrace local customs, speak the language, and uphold the law. The migrant hopes to belong without losing the essence of who they are. The balance between these hopes defines the health of a nation. Solutions exist, though they seldom capture headlines. They begin not at borders, but at roots. Address the causes that forced people to flee, wars that destroy, poverty that imprisons, instability that corrodes hope. Support families, strengthen social fabric, rebuild fertility rates through security and trust rather than fear. Create legal, humane pathways for migration. so that desperation does not dictate destiny. Transparency and honesty must replace performance politics. Borders are not walls of exclusion. They are the contours that give nations form. Yet compassion must remain the heart that gives those nations life. Without borders, chaos. Without empathy, cruelty. Civilization depends on both. And now the West stands before a choice: division or unity. The question is not merely who enters or who stays, but what kind of society will remain when the arguments subside. Picture, if you will, a small town market. A native vendor arranges fruit in neat rows. Across the stall, a migrant customer counts coins carefully. Their exchange is simple, human. Both seek safety, dignity, stability, the very things civilization was built to protect. Their aspirations are not opposed. They are intertwined. If policy is guided by honesty and empathy, if dialogue replaces fear, then perhaps both can thrive, not as strangers divided by circumstance, but as partners in rebuilding the promise that once defined the West. For in the end, it is not the strength of walls that preserves a civilization, but the strength of its conscience. Thank you for listening. Reflect, discuss, and imagine a world where compassion walks beside order, where every life, native or migrant, finds space, recognition, and dignity. Share your thoughts in the comments. Reflect on this with others, and join me again soon.